Innovation and Impact, The Bill Gates Story. Chapter 1, The Formative Years, 1955 to 1975. William Henry Gates III, known to the world as Bill, was born on October 28, 1955, in Seattle, Washington. His arrival into a prominent, intellectual, and community-minded Seattle family set the stage for a life that would reshape the global technological landscape. Yet in his early years, the precise path of his future influence was far from clear, even to those closest to him. His father, William H. Gates Sr., was a towering figure in the Seattle legal community, known for his calm demeanor, sharp intellect, and commitment to civic engagement. His mother, Mary Maxwell Gates, was equally formidable, a trailblazing businesswoman, civic leader, and a dedicated board member for powerful institutions like First Interstate Bancorp and the United Way. Their home was a vibrant intellectual playground, a place where ideas were debated with vigor, and intellectual curiosity was not just encouraged but expected. Bill, the middle child situated between an older sister and a younger one, often found himself engaging in spirited, if sometimes intense, verbal jousting with his parents and siblings. This environment, characterized by intellectual rigor, high expectations, and a healthy dose of competition, undoubtedly served as an early training ground for the formidable negotiating skills and tenacious spirit that would define his later career. Gates was an exceptionally bright child, intellectually restless and blessed with a photographic memory. His capacity for absorbing and recalling information, from entire encyclopedias to complex mathematical formulas, was legendary even in his youth. Yet his brilliance sometimes manifested as an impatient streak, a frustration with anything he perceived as slow or inefficient. His educational journey led him to Lakeside School, an exclusive preparatory school in Seattle. It was within these hallowed halls, in the late 1960s, that the true catalyst for his extraordinary future appeared. Lakeside, remarkably forward-thinking for its time, acquired a teletype terminal connected to a mainframe computer, a General Electric Mark II. This was not merely a cutting-edge piece of equipment, it was a revelation, a portal to a new universe for young Bill. The cost of computer time was exorbitant, but the school, understanding its potential, allocated funds for students to access it. This clunky, humming machine, printing lines of code onto continuous paper, became Gates's obsession. He found a kindred spirit in Paul Allen, a slightly older, quieter, but equally brilliant student who shared his hypnotic fascination with the machine. Together, they virtually lived in the computer lab, poring over manuals, experimenting with programming languages like BASIC, Fortran, and Lisp, and pushing the boundaries of what the computer could do. They even discovered and exploited bugs in the system to gain more free computer time, a testament to their budding hacker instincts and a precursor to Gates's later knack for identifying crucial market opportunities. Their early ventures were more than just academic exercises. They applied their developing skills to real-world problems. One notable collaboration was Trafo Data, a system they developed to analyze traffic data for the city of Seattle. While not a massive financial success, it was a practical application of their programming prowess and a crucial stepping stone in solidifying their partnership and shared entrepreneurial ambition. For Gates and Allen, these were not merely hobbies. They were immersive worlds where they felt profoundly at home, their minds unfettered by conventional classrooms. Despite the pull of computers, academic expectation guided Gates to Harvard University in 1973. He toyed with the idea of following in his father's footsteps into law, briefly considering it as a major. But the allure of the computer lab proved irresistible. His schedule at Harvard was famously unconventional. He rarely attended classes outside of mathematics and computer science, preferring instead to spend long nights in the university's computer facilities, refining his coding skills. He also found a peculiar utility in playing poker throughout the night, honing his strategic thinking, risk assessment, and understanding of probabilities, skills that would later serve him well in the high-stakes game of business. It was during his sophomore year at Harvard that Paul Allen, ever the visionary, brought him a particular issue of Popular Electronics magazine. This magazine, a seemingly innocuous publication, would become the spark that fully ignited what was already an intellectual inferno within Bill Gates. The cover featured the Altair 8800, a microcomputer kit that represented a seismic shift in computing. The first truly personal computer, albeit still a nascent, enthusiast-driven product. The world was about to change, and Bill Gates was poised to be its architect. Chapter 2, Altair to Albuquerque, 1975 to 1978. The frigid January air of Cambridge, Massachusetts, was cut by the crisp rustle of a magazine page. It was 1975, and Paul Allen, then working for Honeywell in Boston, had just rushed into Bill Gates's Harvard dorm room, waving the latest issue of Popular Electronics. The cover featured the MIT's Altair 8800, a do-it-yourself microcomputer kit priced at a revolutionary $397. For Allen, it wasn't just a gadget. It was a revelation, the tangible beginning of the personal computer revolution they had long dreamed of. "Look, Bill," he exclaimed, "this is happening, it's real." Gates, ever analytical, immediately grasped the Altair's significance, but with a crucial caveat. The machine, though groundbreaking, was little more than a sophisticated box of blinking lights without software to instruct it. It needed a programming language, specifically a basic interpreter, which would allow hobbyists and enthusiasts to write their own programs and interact with the machine. Without it, the Altair was a fascinating but useless curiosity. As fate would have it, Micro-Instrumentation and Telemetry Systems, MITS, the creators of the Altair, hadn't just released a promising piece of hardware. They were actively soliciting proposals for a basic interpreter. This was the moment. The two friends, still just 19 and 22, saw their opportunity to be at the forefront of a nascent industry. In a move that perfectly captured his audacious confidence, Gates picked up the phone. He called MITS, located in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and boldly claimed that he and Allen had a fully functioning basic interpreter for the Altair, despite the fact that they hadn't even begun to write it, nor did they own an Altair machine. Ed Roberts, the skeptical but eager president of MITS, was intrigued and asked them to come for a demonstration. The challenge was monumental. Gates and Allen embarked on a frantic, almost superhuman, 8-week coding sprint. Allen, known for his ability to visualize complex systems, took the first flight out to Albuquerque. His task: to write an Altair simulator, a program that would trick a different computer into behaving as if it were an Altair. This simulator was essential because they didn't have the actual hardware to test their code on. Meanwhile, back at Harvard, Bill Gates was the primary architect of the basic interpreter itself. He worked ceaselessly, fueled by Diet Coke and an unwavering conviction, coding late into the night, often falling asleep at his desk only to wake and continue. The pressure mounted as the deadline loomed. When Allen finally landed in Albuquerque, the simulator was ready, but the basic code needed to be integrated and tested on an actual Altair, a machine neither of them had ever worked with directly. The moment of truth arrived. Allen loaded their basic interpreter into the Altair. As he typed "print 2 plus 2, the machine responded with 4. A collective sigh of relief, then exhilaration. It worked. Against all odds, their hastily assembled, brilliant piece of software functioned flawlessly on the real hardware. This successful demonstration led directly to a licensing agreement with MITS. The interpreter, now known as Altair Basic, would be distributed with the nascent computer. This monumental technical achievement also solidified the bond between Gates and Allen and spurred their decision. They were going to build a company. In April 1975, Microsoft, the hyphen would soon be dropped, was formally founded in Albuquerque, New Mexico. The location was a practical choice, placing them close to their first major client, MITS. The early days of Microsoft were lean, intense, and defined by Bill Gates's relentless drive. The office was small, the team even smaller, but the ambition was boundless. Gates was already showcasing the leadership style that would become his hallmark: demanding, deeply involved, and intensely competitive. He famously scrutinized every line of code written by his new employees, often staying up all night to refine, debug, and improve it himself. He had an uncanny ability to spot inefficiencies and potential issues, driving his team and himself to deliver nothing short of perfection. One of the early challenges for the fledgling company was software piracy. The hobbyist community, accustomed to sharing code freely, often copied Altair Basic without paying. This infuriated Gates, who saw it not just as theft, but as an existential threat to their business model. In February 1976, he wrote an open letter to computer hobbyists, published widely, passionately arguing that computer notes was a business and that stealing software would stifle innovation. This bold stance, while controversial at the time, highlighted his pragmatic understanding of the value of intellectual property and his determination to build a sustainable commercial enterprise. Over the next few years, Microsoft continued to refine Altair Basic and began developing other programming languages and tools for a growing number of microcomputers on the market. They licensed their software to companies like Apple and Commodore, gradually expanding their reach and reputation. By 1978, the small team in Albuquerque had established itself as a serious and innovative player in the nascent software industry. They were no longer just a small startup. They were a company with a proven product, a growing revenue stream, and a clear vision for the future of personal computing. The seeds of a global empire were firmly planted in the New Mexico desert. Chapter 3: The IBM Deal and MS-DOS, 1979 to 1982. By 1979, Microsoft had outgrown its humble beginnings in Albuquerque. The company, now a thriving but still relatively small enterprise, made the strategic decision to relocate to Bellevue, Washington. This move brought Bill Gates closer to his family, Paul Allen's roots, and a burgeoning tech talent pool in the Pacific Northwest. While the company was doing well, licensing programming languages like BASIC and Fortran to various hardware manufacturers, a single phone call in 1980 would catapult Microsoft from a successful software vendor into an industry titan, forever altering the course of personal computing history. The caller was IBM, the quintessential Big Blue of the computer world. At the time, IBM was the undisputed king of mainframe computers, synonymous with corporate computing and conservative business practices. They were secretly planning their foray into the personal computer market, a venture IBM internally dubbed the Project Chess, or Acorn Project. IBM's approach to Microsoft was initially for their widely used BASIC interpreter. However, the conversation quickly pivoted. IBM needed an operating system for their new personal computer, and they needed it fast. This was a critical juncture. Microsoft didn't have an operating system of its own. Most personal computers at the time ran on CP/M, Control Program for Microcomputers, developed by Gary Kildall's Digital Research. Gates, showing a characteristic blend of foresight and audacious opportunism, suggested that IBM approach digital research. The story, now legendary, is that IBM's negotiations with digital research broke down over terms, or perhaps due to Kildall's perceived unavailability or a lack of confidentiality agreement. Whatever the precise reasons, the deal didn't happen, and IBM was back to square one, with time ticking. Gates seized the opening. He knew of a small Seattle-based company called Seattle Computer Products, SCP, run by Tim Patterson, which had developed its own operating system known as QDOS, Quick and Dirty Operating System, intended as a CP/M alternative for their own hardware. Gates, leveraging his impressive business acumen, orchestrated a lightning-fast deal. For a mere $50,000, Microsoft acquired the rights to QDOS from SCP. Microsoft then set about refining and rebranding QDOS. It was renamed MS-DOS, Microsoft Disk Operating System. This acquisition, executed with remarkable speed and secrecy, was less about superior technology. MS-DOS was functional but not revolutionary, and more about unparalleled business strategy. The real stroke of genius came in the licensing agreement between IBM and Microsoft. Crucially, Microsoft insisted on a non-exclusive license. This meant that while IBM would use MS-DOS for their new personal computer, Microsoft retained the right to license MS-DOS to other computer manufacturers. IBM, perhaps underestimating the future significance of the operating system or focusing too heavily on hardware sales, agreed to these terms. They were used to selling mainframes as integrated units and presumably didn't foresee the fragmentation of the PC market that was about to occur. When the IBM personal computer, IBM PC, was officially launched on August 12, 1981, it was an immediate commercial success. IBM's established reputation in the business world lent credibility to the personal computer, transforming it from a hobbyist's toy into a legitimate business tool. And powering every single IBM PC was MS-DOS. The non-exclusive licensing strategy proved to be revolutionary. As the IBM PC gained widespread adoption, other hardware manufacturers began producing IBM PC compatibles, or clone machines. These companies, wanting to capitalize on the burgeoning market created by IBM, needed an operating system that would run all the software developed for the IBM PC. Because of their non-exclusive agreement, Microsoft was perfectly positioned to license MS-DOS to every single one of them. This meant that Microsoft earned a royalty on every IBM PC and every IBM PC clone sold. From a shrewd $50,000 investment for QDOS, MS-DOS became the de facto industry standard, laying the foundation for Microsoft's future dominance. Bill Gates, then only 26 years old, had demonstrated an extraordinary blend of technical insight, aggressive negotiation, and strategic foresight. He understood that software, not hardware, would be the true lever of power in the personal computing revolution. The IBM deal fundamentally transformed Microsoft. It cemented their position as a central player in the booming personal computer market. It provided massive revenue streams and, perhaps more importantly, instilled in Gates and his team a conviction that software would be the driving force of the future. The stage was now set for Microsoft, powered by MS-DOS, to build an empire, one operating system license at a time. Chapter 4: Windows on the World, 1983 to 1990. With MS-DOS firmly established as the lingua franca of personal computing, Microsoft was perfectly positioned to capitalize on the burgeoning PC market. Yet Bill Gates, ever the visionary, foresaw the limitations of the text-based, command-line interface that characterized DOS. He understood that for personal computers to truly permeate homes and businesses, they needed to become more intuitive, more visual, and less intimidating for the average user. The future, he believed, lay in a graphical user interface GUI. The inspiration, and indeed the competition, was clear. Apple, under the charismatic leadership of Steve Jobs, had initially introduced the Lisa in 1983 and then the groundbreaking Macintosh in 1984. Both featured a mouse-driven, icon-based interface, which was revolutionary in its simplicity and user-friendliness compared to the arcane commands of DOS. Gates, who had initially partnered with Apple to develop software for the Macintosh, including the first versions of Microsoft Word and Excel, was deeply familiar with the Mac's GUI and its potential. He knew Microsoft had to create its own, better version. Thus began Project Interface Manager, which would later be officially named Windows. The initial announcement for Windows was made with considerable fanfare in November 1983. Gates hailed it as a unique software environment that would allow users to easily switch between programs without retyping commands. He was enthusiastic, predicting a swift delivery by early 1984. However, the path to a fully functional, market-ready graphical operating environment proved to be far more arduous than anticipated. Development was plagued by delays, internal disagreements, and technical hurdles. Creating a robust GUI that could run on the diverse array of IBM PC-compatible hardware, each with its own quirks and drivers, was a monumental task. Unlike Apple, which controlled both hardware and software, Microsoft had to build a system that could work across countless different devices. Windows faced skepticism from within Microsoft, from the press, and from users accustomed to DOS. Years passed, mock-ups were shown, and release dates were continually pushed back. The press began to jokingly refer to it as vaporware, software announced long before its actual release, if ever. Finally, on November 20, 1985, Windows 1.0 was released. It was a modest beginning. Reviewers found it clunky, slow, and resource-intensive, often comparing it unfavorably to the Macintosh. Yet, it was a crucial first step. It allowed users to run multiple applications in Windows on a screen, use a mouse to navigate, and included basic applications like a calculator, calendar, and paint. More importantly, it solidified Microsoft's commitment to the GUI and laid the groundwork for future iterations. The next few years saw Microsoft iterating aggressively. Windows 2.0 followed in 1987, introducing overlapping windows, and then Windows 3.0, released in May 1990, which proved to be the pivotal breakthrough. This version finally offered a significantly improved user experience, better memory management, and crucially, a burgeoning ecosystem of third-party applications. Suddenly, Windows was not just usable, it was compelling. In parallel with this technological progression, Microsoft was also evolving as a company. On March 13, 1986, Microsoft went public with its initial public offering, IPO. The stock was offered at $21 per share. By the end of the first day, it had closed at $28.75. This day alone created 4 billionaires and an estimated 12,000 millionaires within Microsoft. Bill Gates, still only 30 years old, saw his 45% stake in the company suddenly worth a staggering $350 million, making him one of the youngest billionaires in the world. The IPO cemented Microsoft's financial power and attracted top talent, enabling further rapid expansion. Throughout this period, Gates remained the relentless, driving force of Microsoft. He was known for his intense think weeks, retreating to a quiet cabin to read and strategize. He demanded intellectual rigor from his employees, engaging in heated debates, often challenging their assumptions and driving them to higher levels of performance. His intelligence was fearsome, his memory encyclopedic, and his ability to see connections and extrapolate trends was unparalleled. By the early 1990s, Microsoft had grown from a small startup into a software powerhouse. Windows 3.0's success demonstrated the commercial viability of a GUI on IBM-compatible PCs. The company had built a robust ecosystem of developers, a loyal customer base, and a strong financial foundation. The stage was set for Microsoft to move from being a successful software vendor to the dominant force in the global technology industry, poised to put a copy of Windows on virtually every desktop in the world. Chapter 5. The Software King, 1991 to 1995. The early 1990s marked Microsoft's unequivocal ascension to the undisputed throne of the software world. The foundation laid by MS-DOS and the critical success of Windows 3.0 transformed the company from a well-established player into a global phenomenon. Bill Gates, with his relentless drive and tactical brilliance, stood at the pinnacle of this empire, recognized globally as the ultimate software king. The turning point came decisively with the release of Windows 3.1 in April 1992, an incremental but critical improvement over its predecessor. What followed was an avalanche of adoption. Windows 3.1 was faster, more stable, and possessed better font and multimedia support, making it truly appealing to a broader user base. It became the dominant operating system for personal computers, largely due to its availability on inexpensive PC clones, which far outcompeted Apple's higher-priced Macintosh systems in terms of market share. Suddenly, graphical computing was accessible to millions, and it was running Windows. But Microsoft's dominance wasn't solely built on Windows. Complementing the operating system was the omnipresent suite of applications known as Microsoft Office. By this time, Word had become the standard for word processing, Excel for spreadsheets, and PowerPoint for presentations. This integrated approach, an operating system and a powerful suite of productivity applications, created a powerful synergy. Users who invested in Windows were more likely to buy Office, and Office users found Windows to be the most natural and efficient environment for their work. This ecosystem proved incredibly difficult for competitors to penetrate. The culmination of this era was the launch of Windows 95 on August 24, 1995. This was not just a software release, it was a cultural event. With a massive marketing campaign, a multi-million-dollar advertising budget featuring the Rolling Stones, Start Me Up, and a launch event presided over by Bill Gates and Jay Leno, Windows 95 captured the public imagination. It introduced fundamental changes that are still recognizable today, such as the Start button, the taskbar, and plug-and-play functionality. It was an operating system designed for the mainstream, making personal computing more accessible, fun, and powerful than ever before. Its success was astounding, selling millions of copies in its first weeks and solidifying Microsoft's near monopoly on the desktop operating system market. During this period, Bill Gates's persona solidified in the public eye. He was seen as a brilliant, intimidating, and fiercely competitive leader. His demanding nature, often manifested in intense Bill meetings, where he would challenge employees to their intellectual limits, became legendary within Microsoft. He was known for his encyclopedic memory, his ability to recall details from technical specifications to sales figures, and his unblinking stare that could make even seasoned executives squirm. Critics often described Microsoft's business tactics during this era as aggressive, leveraging its dominant position to bundle products, squash competitors, and extend its reach into new software categories. Phrases like embrace, extend, and extinguish began to circulate, describing Microsoft's alleged strategy of adopting open standards, extending them with proprietary features, and then dominating the market. Despite the intensity of his professional life, 1994 brought a significant personal milestone. On January 1, Bill Gates married Melinda French, a Microsoft product manager in Hawaii. Their relationship, built on shared intellect and a common drive, would later become the foundation for their monumental philanthropic endeavors. Though at this point, Microsoft remained his dominant focus. By the mid-1990s, Microsoft was an unstoppable force. It controlled the vast majority of personal computer operating systems and held a commanding lead in office productivity software. Bill Gates had successfully executed his vision of putting a computer on every desk and in every home, with Microsoft software running on virtually all of them. The company was the envy of the tech world, seemingly invulnerable, and Gates, at just 39 years old, was the richest man in the world, the undisputed software king. The world, it seemed, was his windows. But a new, disruptive force was rapidly emerging in the background, the internet, and even the software king would have to adapt. Chapter 6. The Internet Shift and Antitrust, 1996 to 2000. Just as Microsoft was basking in the unprecedented glow of Windows 95's success and seemingly unassailable market dominance, a new tectonic shift was occurring within the technology landscape: the rise of the Internet. For a brief, critical period, Bill Gates, despite his profound foresight in other areas, famously underestimated its revolutionary potential. Initially, he saw it primarily as a platform for information sharing and content delivery, rather than a fundamental rewiring of computing itself. This misjudgment was quickly recognized and rectified with characteristic intensity. In late 1995, Gates issued his famous Internet Tidal Wave memo, a pivotal internal document that signaled Microsoft's abrupt and total reorientation towards the web. He declared that the Internet was the most important development since the advent of the PC, and that every product line at Microsoft would need to be rewired to embrace it. It was a rapid, decisive pivot, demonstrating Gates's willingness to admit error and command the vast resources of his empire to catch up. The most visible battleground of this pivot became the browser wars. Netscape Navigator, having ridden the early wave of Internet adoption, was the dominant web browser. Microsoft, perceiving Netscape as a direct threat to the sanctity of the Windows desktop, launched Internet Explorer, IE, with a singular mission: to crush the competitor. Leveraging its overwhelming market position, Microsoft began bundling Internet Explorer with every copy of Windows, effectively making it free and ubiquitous. They also entered into aggressive agreements with Internet service providers and computer manufacturers to make IE the default browser. This strategy was brutally effective. Netscape's market share plummeted, and by the end of the decade, Internet Explorer held a near monopoly. However, Microsoft's aggressive tactics did not go unnoticed. For years, the company had been under scrutiny for its leveraging of its Windows monopoly. The browser wars ignited these concerns into a full-blown crisis. On May 18, 1998, the U.S. Department of Justice, DOJ, and 20 state attorneys general filed an antitrust lawsuit against Microsoft, accusing the company of using its operating system monopoly to illegally stifle competition, particularly against Netscape and potentially other emerging internet technologies. The lawsuit was a dramatic public spectacle. Bill Gates himself was called to testify. His depositions, characterized by his combative, often evasive answers and apparent struggle to recall basic facts or email exchanges, were a public relations disaster for Microsoft. Observers noted that Gates seemed genuinely surprised by the intense scrutiny of his company's business practices, often appearing out of touch with how his actions were perceived outside the tech bubble. He was seen as arrogant, dismissive, and fiercely unapologetic, reinforcing the image of a corporate Goliath determined to win at all costs. The legal battle dragged on for years. In April 2000, Judge Thomas Penfield Jackson issued a findings of fact ruling, concluding that Microsoft indeed held monopoly power and had abused it. Later, he ordered that Microsoft be broken up into two separate companies, one for the operating system and one for software applications. This drastic remedy sent shockwaves through the tech world. While Microsoft fought and eventually overturned the breakup order on appeal, settling for a less severe agreement that included monitoring of its practices, the antitrust case had a profound impact. It inflicted significant financial and reputational damage on the company, diverting enormous resources and management attention away from innovation. It also forced Gates to confront the negative public perception of Microsoft and, by extension, himself. Amidst the legal turmoil, the world braced for the famed Y2K bug, a widespread concern that computers would fail at the turn of the millennium due to a two-digit date format. While the doomsday predictions largely failed to materialize, Microsoft played a significant role in helping companies and governments update their systems, demonstrating the pervasive integration of its software into global infrastructure. By the end of the 20th century, Bill Gates remained the richest man in the world, and Microsoft was still a dominant force. But the Internet revolution and the ensuing legal entanglement had marked a significant inflection point. Gates, often described as a brilliant but sometimes isolated figure, began to reflect on Microsoft's place in the world and his own future. The relentless competitive fire that had built his empire was beginning to shift, ever so subtly, towards a different kind of challenge, one that would redefine his post-Microsoft legacy. Chapter 7, Passing the Baton, 2000 to 2008. The turn of the millennium was a period of introspection and strategic recalibration for Bill Gates and Microsoft. The long, draining antitrust battle, while eventually settled without the company's breakup, highlighted the intense scrutiny and public responsibility that came with unprecedented market dominance. Gates, personally stung by the courtroom testimonies and the image of Microsoft as a ruthless monopolist, began to consider a different future for himself and the company. His competitive fire had built an empire, but a new kind of legacy was calling. In January 2000, Gates made a pivotal announcement. He was stepping down as CEO of Microsoft. The reins of the technology giant were passed to his longtime friend and trusted lieutenant, Steve Ballmer. This transition was significant. Ballmer, an energetic and charismatic leader known for his operational prowess, would take charge of the day-to-day management of the vast Microsoft enterprise. Gates, while relinquishing the CEO title, did not fully depart. He transitioned into a newly created role, Chief Software Architect. This new position allowed Gates to focus on his deepest passion, technology and product strategy. Free from the immense administrative burden of running a multi-billion-dollar corporation, he could dive back into the essence of Microsoft, thinking about the big picture, guiding research and development, and shaping the next generation of software innovation. He was deeply involved in initiatives like the Net strategy, a foundational shift for Microsoft's web services, and in the development of new operating systems and applications. He continued to influence Microsoft's direction, but the ultimate operational decisions now rested with Ballmer. However, even as he immersed himself in software architecture, another, equally compelling, passion was growing: philanthropy. The seeds of this shift had been sown years earlier. His parents, particularly his mother, Mary, had instilled in him a strong sense of civic duty and giving back. His mother's death in 1994 from breast cancer provided a powerful, personal impetus. He and Melinda had already initiated philanthropic efforts through foundations established by his parents. But as their wealth grew, the scale of what they could achieve expanded exponentially. In 2000, shortly after Gates stepped down as CEO, a profound organizational change occurred that would redefine his public persona and future legacy. The consolidation of their various charitable efforts into a single, massive entity, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. This entity would become the largest private charitable foundation in the world, initially focused on global health, poverty alleviation, and educational initiatives. From this point onwards, Gates's public appearances and professional focus gradually began to shift. While he remained active as chief software architect, an increasing amount of his time was dedicated to the foundation. He and Melinda immersed themselves in understanding complex global issues, from the mechanics of vaccine distribution in developing countries to the socioeconomic factors driving poverty. Gates applied the same rigorous, data-driven, and problem-solving approach to philanthropy as he had to software development. He met with scientists, health experts, government leaders, and activists, asking probing questions, challenging conventional wisdom, and seeking scalable solutions to the world's most intractable problems. His final full-time day at Microsoft arrived on June 27, 2008. It was a momentous occasion, marking the formal end of his daily operational involvement with the company he had co-founded 33 years earlier, while he retained his role as chairman of the board, a position he would hold until 2014 and then step down completely in 2020. His personal and professional focus shifted almost entirely to the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. This transition was more than merely a stepping down. It was a profound reorientation. Gates was actively choosing to apply his unique intellect, immense wealth, and unparalleled problem-solving skills to the most pressing global challenges. The man known as the ruthless software king was beginning to transform into the world's most influential philanthropist, ready to dedicate the second act of his life to improving the lives of billions. The world watched, intrigued, as Bill Gates began to write his next chapter, not in code but in global impact. Chapter 8, A New Chapter, Philanthropy Unlocked 2000 to 2010. The year 2000 marked a significant turning point in the life of Bill Gates, one that would redefine his public image and set the course for his second, equally impactful, career. It was the year that the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation was formally established through the merger of his parents' foundations and the Gates Learning Foundation, consolidating an immense pool of resources and a burgeoning vision under one umbrella. This wasn't philanthropy as a mere hobby or a footnote. It was a deliberate, strategic, and profoundly ambitious undertaking, treated with the same intellectual rigor and competitive drive that built Microsoft. The origins of this philanthropic journey are rooted deeply in Gates's upbringing. His mother, Mary Maxwell Gates, was a formidable force in the civic arena, serving on numerous boards, including the United Way. Her constant emphasis on community service and social responsibility left an indelible mark on young Bill. His father, William H. Gates Sr., a prominent attorney, also dedicated significant time to charitable causes. When Mary Gates passed away in 1994, her unwavering commitment to others served as a powerful impetus for Bill and Melinda to scale up their giving. Initially, their early philanthropic ventures were more conventional, focusing on library access through the Gates Learning Foundation, inspired by the belief that access to information could unlock human potential. But as they delved deeper, and as their resources swelled from Microsoft's phenomenal success, they began to envision something far grander. The mission of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation was audacious: to reduce inequity globally. This broad mandate quickly translated into specific, high-impact areas. Global health became a core focus, targeting diseases that disproportionately affected the world's poorest populations. They embarked on ambitious campaigns for vaccine development and distribution, understanding that preventable diseases like polio, measles, and malaria were not just health crises, but immense barriers to economic and social development. Poverty alleviation and access to sanitation were also prioritized, with the foundation seeking innovative solutions to lift communities out of extreme hardship. In the United States, their focus initially centered on education reform, aiming to improve public education from high school graduation rates to teacher effectiveness. What set the Gates Foundation apart from many traditional philanthropies from its inception was its entrepreneurial approach. Bill and Melinda approached their work with the same data-driven rigor, strategic planning, and performance metrics that characterized a successful Silicon Valley startup. They demanded evidence-based solutions, invested heavily in research and development, and sought out disruptive innovations. They didn't just give money. They aimed to catalyze change through targeted investments, partnerships with governments, NGOs, and multinational corporations, and a constant search for scalable, sustainable impact. A prime early example of their innovative strategy was their focus on polio eradication. Recognizing the devastating impact of the disease and drawing inspiration from Rotary International's decades-long efforts, the foundation became a key partner in the global polio eradication initiative. They invested billions, coordinating efforts, supporting vaccination campaigns, and providing the logistical and financial muscle needed to reach remote communities. This ambitious goal, once thought unattainable, began to inch closer to reality under their sustained pressure and funding. Through its early years, the foundation also made significant strides in combating other diseases like malaria and HIV/AIDS, funding research for new treatments, diagnostics, and prevention methods. They supported initiatives to improve maternal and child health, recognizing that healthy mothers and children were fundamental to breaking cycles of poverty. Their approach wasn't always without criticism. Some argued their focus was too narrow, or that their big bet approach risked overlooking smaller, community-led initiatives. But overall, their influence was undeniable and growing. By the end of its first decade, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation had not only become the world's largest private charitable foundation, with an endowment reaching tens of billions of dollars, but it had also profoundly reshaped the landscape of global philanthropy. Bill and Melinda Gates, through their personal engagement, their intellectual curiosity, and their willingness to deploy immense resources strategically, had unlocked a new chapter in their lives, one dedicated not to dominating markets, but to serving humanity on an unprecedented scale. The software king was now transforming into the philanthropic statesman, tackling the world's grandest challenges with the same intensity that had once propelled Microsoft. Chapter 9. Global Challenges, Global Solutions, 2011 to 2020. As the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation entered its second decade, it solidified its reputation as a leading force in global development, transforming from a well-endowed newcomer into a deeply experienced and influential philanthropic powerhouse. Under Bill and Melinda's unwavering leadership, the foundation continued to double down on its data-driven, entrepreneurial approach, tackling some of the world's most daunting challenges with a blend of scientific expertise and a commitment to innovation. Global health remained at the very core of their mission. Building on the successes of its early years, the foundation delved deeper into specific health initiatives, becoming a primary driver in the fight against infectious diseases. Their commitment to polio eradication continued to be a flagship effort. Gates became a vocal advocate and fundraiser, leveraging his vast network and influence to galvanize international support. He traveled to India and Africa, personally overseeing vaccination campaigns, understanding that the final mile of eradication required meticulous planning and persistent outreach. The dramatic decline in polio cases globally was a testament to these concentrated efforts, demonstrating the power of sustained investment and coordinated action. Beyond polio, the Gates Foundation significantly invested in the fight against malaria and HIV/AIDS. For malaria, this involved not just funding drug development and distribution, but also innovative research into mosquito control, including genetically modified mosquitoes and novel diagnostics. For HIV/AIDS, their focus extended beyond treatment access to prevention strategies, including microbicides and improved access to contraception, recognizing the complex social and economic factors tied to disease transmission. sanitation became another critical area of focus. Understanding that lack of adequate sanitation was a major contributor to disease and poverty, particularly in urban slums. Gates personally championed initiatives like the Reinvent the Toilet Challenge. This challenge sought to spur the creation of sustainable, affordable, and effective sanitation technologies for off-grid communities, embodying the foundation's belief that technological innovation could solve even the most basic human needs. Agricultural development in sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia also received substantial attention. The foundation recognized that robust, climate-resilient agriculture was fundamental to food security and economic stability. They invested in research for drought-resistant crops, improved farming techniques, and access to markets for smallholder farmers, aiming to break the cycle of poverty and vulnerability. Gates often spoke about the injustice of preventable hunger, applying his business acumen to find scalable solutions for food production. Beyond health and development, Gates's growing concern about climate change translated into a significant new area of philanthropic and personal investment. While some foundations focused on policy advocacy, Gates's approach was distinctively technological. Through the foundation and his personal venture capital fund, Breakthrough Energy, he began investing heavily in companies developing innovative energy solutions, from advanced nuclear designs to next-generation battery storage and carbon capture technologies. He saw climate change as a complex engineering problem requiring massive technological breakthroughs, akin to the challenges he tackled in software. He became a leading voice advocating for green premiums, the additional cost of choosing clean technologies over fossil fuels, and arguing for government and private investment to drive these costs down. Throughout this period, Bill Gates maintained an active public persona, engaging with world leaders, scientists, and entrepreneurs. He became a sought-after speaker, publishing articles and maintaining his Gates Notes blog, where he shared his thoughts on books, global issues, and technological advancements. He consistently used his platform to advocate for increased foreign aid, equitable vaccine distribution, and sustained investment in research and development to address global challenges. While the foundation's work garnered widespread acclaim and measurable successes, it was not without its critics. Debates surfaced regarding the foundation's influence on public policy, the ethical implications of some of its investments, and questions about democracy when such immense wealth is concentrated in private hands. However, the sheer scale of the foundation's impact and its commitment to transparency largely overshadowed these criticisms. By 2020, as the world grappled with an unprecedented pandemic, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation was uniquely positioned to respond. Their decades of investment in vaccine research, disease surveillance, and health infrastructure proved invaluable. They became a leading funder in the global response to COVID-19, supporting vaccine development, equitable access, and strengthening health systems worldwide. This period underscored Bill Gates's continued global relevance, not just as a technology pioneer, but as a crucial voice and driver in addressing the world's most urgent crises. Chapter 10. Life Beyond Microsoft. Personal and Professional, 2008-present. Since stepping down from his full-time role at Microsoft in 2008, and fully from its board in 2020, Bill Gates has embarked on a multifaceted life characterized by an expansive professional ambition and a profound shift in his personal landscape. His post-Microsoft journey has not been one of quiet retirement, but rather a zealous engagement with the world's most complex problems, albeit through different lenses and with a vastly expanded portfolio of interests. At the core of his professional life remains the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. With Melinda French Gates as his co-chair, he continued to drive the foundation's aggressive strategies in global health, development, and education. He maintained a rigorous schedule of travel, visiting developing countries, meeting with heads of state, scientists, and frontline workers to understand challenges firsthand and advocate for solutions. His analytical mind, honed by decades of software development, proved equally adept at dissecting epidemiological data, supply chain logistics for vaccines, or agricultural yield reports. He embodies the principle of catalytic philanthropy, using the foundation's resources not just as money for good, but as a strategic tool to bring together actors, fund research, and develop innovative market-based solutions where traditional aid often falls short. Beyond the foundation, Gates significantly expanded his personal investments, particularly in areas aligning with his philanthropic goals. His interest in climate change, which grew from a side project in the early 2010s to a central concern, led to the creation of Breakthrough Energy. This network of investment funds, nonprofits, and policy advocacy initiatives is dedicated to accelerating the transition to a clean energy future. Gates has personally invested billions of dollars into nascent technologies aiming to decarbonize sectors like cement, steel, and aviation, recognizing that incremental changes won't be enough to avert climate catastrophe. He has also authored a best-selling book, How to Avoid a Climate Disaster, articulating his vision for technological innovation as the primary pathway to a carbon-neutral future. He has also continued to serve as an ad hoc advisor to governments and global organizations on matters of public health and technological innovation. His extensive network and experience have made him a valuable, if sometimes controversial, voice in times of crisis, perhaps most notably during the COVID-19 pandemic. His early warnings about the threat of pandemics, made years before the actual outbreak, brought him both praise and the unfortunate target of conspiracy theories. Unfazed, Gates continued to champion vaccine development and equitable global distribution, reiterating the foundation's long-standing commitment to preparing for future health crises. On the personal front, the mid-2020s brought a significant and very public change. In May 2021, Bill and Melinda Gates announced their decision to divorce after 27 years of marriage. The announcement sent shockwaves through the philanthropic world, given their intertwined leadership of the foundation. While both committed to continuing their work as co-chairs, the divorce raised questions about the long-term governance and future direction of the world's largest private foundation. For Bill, it marked the end of a personal partnership that had been foundational to his life for nearly 3 decades, including the raising of their 3 children, Jennifer, Rory, and Phoebe. The couple cited an inability to grow together as a couple as the reason, and the transition into a new phase of their relationship, while still co-directing their immense philanthropic efforts, remains a unique and closely watched endeavor. Despite the personal changes, Gates continues to be a vocal public intellectual. He maintains his Gates Notes blog, where he shares book recommendations, insights on global challenges, and updates on his various projects. He engages with new generations of entrepreneurs and philanthropists, offering advice and insights derived from his unparalleled career. He is a frequent presence at global conferences, from Davos to TED, eloquently advocating for scientific solutions to complex problems and emphasizing the imperative of innovation in addressing humanity's grandest challenges. His life post-Microsoft is a testament to the idea that immense wealth, combined with a restless, powerful intellect, can be leveraged for global good. Bill Gates, no longer just the software king, has successfully transitioned into a full-time global problem solver, embracing a future where his impact is less about market dominance and more about shaping human progress on a planetary scale. His continued journey, balancing personal evolution with an unwavering commitment to societal betterment, offers a compelling narrative of purpose and reinvention. Chapter 11: The Gates Legacy. Innovation, Philanthropy, and Controversy. To evaluate the legacy of Bill Gates is to assess nothing less than the trajectory of the digital age and the burgeoning landscape of global philanthropy. His impact is monumental, spanning multiple decades and touching billions of lives, yet it remains a complex tapestry woven with threads of innovation, immense benefit, and persistent controversy. In the realm of technology, Gates's legacy is undeniable. He transformed computing from a specialized craft for engineers and hobbyists into a ubiquitous tool for everyone. The vision he shared with Paul Allen of putting a computer on every desk and in every home became a reality largely due to Microsoft's efforts. MS-DOS became the operating system that launched the IBM PC-compatible revolution, creating an industry standard that allowed for massive scale. Windows, despite its challenging early days, evolved into the dominant graphical user interface, making personal computing accessible and intuitive for the masses. Microsoft Office applications like Word, Excel, and PowerPoint became the global standard for productivity, fundamentally changing how businesses and individuals work. His business acumen, particularly his strategic understanding of software licensing and ecosystems, was revolutionary. He grasped early that controlling the operating system and applications would provide immense leverage, a lesson that shaped the entire software industry. His relentless pursuit of market dominance, the bundling of products, and the sheer scale and speed of Microsoft's growth became hallmarks of the era, inspiring countless entrepreneurs while simultaneously becoming a case study in aggressive capitalism. However, this very success ignited intense scrutiny. The antitrust lawsuit brought by the U.S. Department of Justice and various states painted a picture of Microsoft as a ruthless monopolist bent on stifling competition. While the company largely prevailed in avoiding a breakup, the legal battles left an indelible mark on Gates's public image and Microsoft's reputation. Critics argue that Microsoft stifled innovation, leading to a period of less dynamic competition in the software industry than might otherwise have occurred. The debates around monopolies, power, and wealth concentration continue to echo, with Microsoft often cited as a prime historical example. The second, and perhaps even more transformative, chapter of Gates's legacy lies in philanthropy. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, established in 2000, rapidly became the world's largest private charitable foundation. Its commitment to applying data-driven, entrepreneurial strategies to solve some of humanity's most intractable problems, global health inequities, extreme poverty, and educational disparities, has revolutionized the field of philanthropy. The foundation's achievements are staggering, playing a pivotal role in near-polio eradication, dramatically reducing child mortality through vaccine initiatives, funding critical research for diseases like malaria and HIV/AIDS, and investing billions in agricultural development and sanitation solutions. Gates and Melinda pushed for transparency, accountability, and measurable outcomes, setting new standards for the effectiveness of charitable giving. Their leadership inspired other billionaires to commit to similar philanthropic pledges, such as the Giving Pledge. Yet, this philanthropic endeavor has not been immune to criticism. Some argue that the foundation's immense wealth and influence exert undue power over global health agendas, potentially sidelining local governance or smaller, more community-led initiatives. Questions are raised about the foundation's investment portfolio, which sometimes includes holdings in companies whose practices seemingly contradict the foundation's mission. Debates about the effectiveness of top-down philanthropic models versus grassroots empowerment continue, and Gates, as the architect of the largest, most influential philanthropic endeavor, often finds himself at the center of these discussions. Ultimately, Bill Gates's legacy is a testament to the power of a singular, brilliant mind to drive change on a grand scale. From a tenacious programmer to the relentless CEO who built an empire, and then to a global humanitarian tackling the planet's most pressing challenges, his journey reflects an extraordinary capacity for reinvention and impact. He forced the world to compute differently, and he forced philanthropy to think bigger and act more strategically. While the debates about his competitive tactics and the scale of his influence will likely continue for generations, his profound imprint on technology, public health, and the very concept of global citizenship is indisputable. He remains a figure of immense influence, embodying both the promise and the complexities of modern power and wealth. Chapter 12. A Look Ahead. What's next for Bill Gates? As the pages of this book close, the story of Bill Gates remains an evolving narrative. No longer the young, intense CEO building a software empire, nor simply the co-chair of the world's largest charitable foundation, he has transitioned into a new phase of life. One defined by highly focused technological problem-solving, strategic investments, and a continued, deliberate engagement with global challenges. His current priorities reveal a clear commitment to leveraging technology for human betterment, particularly in the twin arenas of climate change and pandemic preparedness. Through breakthrough energy, he remains deeply immersed in fostering innovation in clean energy. This initiative is not just about funding. It's about creating a complex ecosystem of venture capital, philanthropy, technology development, and policy advocacy. Gates is personally invested in projects ranging from next-generation nuclear power and long-duration energy storage to green hydrogen and sustainable aviation fuels. He believes that only dramatic technological breakthroughs, coupled with smart policy and market incentives, can achieve global net zero emissions while ensuring equitable access to energy. Parallel to his climate efforts, the experience of the COVID-19 pandemic only deepened his conviction about the urgent need for global health security. His advocacy for a robust, global emergency response team, a system for rapid detection, containment, and equitable distribution of medical countermeasures, remains a central theme. Gates continues to emphasize the importance of investing in research and development for new vaccines and therapies, strengthening health systems in low-income countries, and creating international mechanisms for rapid response to future health crises. His public statements are increasingly focused on these existential threats, reflecting a shift from addressing specific diseases to building resilient planetary defenses. What does this mean for the future of the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation? Following his divorce from Melinda French Gates and their stated commitment to continuing to co-govern the foundation, its direction is likely to remain largely consistent with its established mission. However, the foundation's evolution in leadership and strategy will undoubtedly be a closely watched development within the philanthropic world. Bill Gates's personal focus on specific technological solutions for climate and health will undoubtedly continue to influence areas of the foundation's work. But the day-to-day operations and broader strategies will increasingly reflect the insights and priorities of its dedicated teams and co-chairs. Looking ahead, Gates continues to shape his legacy not just through direct action, but through his role as a global public intellectual. He frequently shares his reading lists and insights on his Gates Notes blog, engages in deep-dive interviews, and participates in global forums. He uses these platforms to educate, persuade, and challenge, often distilling complex scientific and economic issues into accessible narratives. He sees himself as a convener, a strategist, and an investor of both capital and intellect in solutions that promise to benefit humanity on a grand scale. Bill Gates's unique journey from teenage programming prodigy to titan of industry, from antitrust defendant to the world's leading philanthropist, offers profound lessons. It highlights the power of early passion, the strategic brilliance required for market dominance, the difficult but necessary pivot towards public service, and the relentless drive to apply intelligence and resources to the world's most daunting problems. His future, while no longer tied to the daily grind of a tech company, is certainly not one of quiet retirement. Instead, Bill Gates appears set to continue his self-appointed mission, to identify critical global challenges and apply his formidable intellect, network, and resources to accelerating solutions. In a world grappling with climate change, future pandemics, and persistent inequalities, his continued engagement will undoubtedly remain a significant, active force in shaping the landscape of human progress in the 21st century.